Let's talk about the Steam Deck OLED 1 month later. How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and this is my channel Deck Ready, where I talk about everything related to the Steam Deck and other gaming handhelds. It's hard to believe that it's already been 1 month since we all went through the mental turmoil of trying to order a limited edition Steam Deck OLED that was so limited it was in stock for about a week after it came out. Good one, Valve. That was really cool. But yeah, once we got our hands on this thing, it was pretty clear that this was more than just a screen upgrade for the console. And the cool thing is, the screen is a very legitimate upgrade. Like, still, a month later, every time I hit that power button when I'm in bed and I'm presented with that OLED logo and then the new OLED screen and layout and everything, even if I have a game running, it immediately hits me how big of an upgrade an OLED screen is for this handheld, especially the anti-glare one, which I know, big controversy, right? Like the anti-glare one, it crushes the blacks and makes them a little bit washed out depending on certain lights. But it turns out that you need a light aiming at the console for that to be the case. And if you had the glossy screen, if you had a light aiming at the console, then it would kind of reflect anyway. So it doesn't really matter all that much. All I'm saying is the screen looks incredibly good. But yeah, I've had the Steam Deck for about a month, and I wanted to talk about how my habits and everything have changed with the Steam Deck with this new handheld. Because on paper, calling it a Steam Deck OLED, it immediately makes you think that the only thing they upgraded is the screen. But in reality, as we all know now, Valve literally just took the Steam Deck apart, put all the pieces out on a table in front of them, and went over each individual tiny piece and said, is this good enough? And in the vast majority of places, they thankfully said no, because even in things I didn't think needed an upgrade, like the face buttons, for example, or the D-pad, they made meaningful changes that ultimately resulted in the best possible Steam Deck. And ultimately, I think they made their job a lot harder with the Steam Deck 2, but if they just come out and say this thing looks exactly the same as the Steam Deck OLED, but it runs games a lot better, I think I'm gonna be a day one buyer, because Valve has knocked it out of the park with 2 releases in a row. So yeah, as for the hardware, I gotta say this thing feels overall a lot more durable. I gotta be honest, with my old Steam Deck, the original LCD screen version, I always had that thing in the case when I wasn't playing it, whether I was in bed, whether I was on the couch, whether I was in my office working with it, or any other scenario you can think of. When I was done playing with the Steam Deck LCD, it went in the case. And the reason for that is I managed to break it twice. The first time it fell and the right bumper broke, and I was really upset about it because it was a very short drop and it didn't really feel like the kind of drop that would cause the bumper to break, especially as someone who grew up with things like the Game Boy Advance SP, the Nintendo DS, even the 3DS. You could throw those things at a brick wall and run them over with a Mack truck, and they would be exactly the same as they were before you threw them at a brick wall. So to have a Steam Deck bumper break, dropping it just a few inches on top of all the other issues people were having with hardware durability, things like screen bleed, the joysticks popping out of the hole that they sit in, like the half circle plastic would pop out, and then you were basically SOL from that point forward, joysticks breaking, like in terms of not really registering right, getting stick drift, screen bleed, everything like that. I just didn't want to deal with any durability concerns with the original Steam Deck, so it always went in its case. So it makes me excited and a little scared to say that with the Steam Deck OLED, I've done that a lot less. Like when I play it in bed, I just put it on the nightstand table next to me when I'm done with it. When I'm down here working, I usually leave it on its little stand that I use to film B-roll, or the Steam Deck dock or something like that. I have no problem just leaving it out of the case on my couch. I've actually dropped it once already, picking it up. It fell on hardwood floor. I had no issues at all, and it's still just as new looking as the day I got it. And the craziest thing is the Steam Deck original, the LCD model, the screen would scratch up really easily. It was a very similar problem to what you had with the original Nintendo Switch, where when you would put that thing in the dock over and over again, the bottom corner of the screen would scratch. If you took it in and out of the case too many times, or you slid it across your pant leg or something like that, you could scratch the screen on the LCD model very easily. So when I got my replacement, my RMA model, I went and ordered the D-brand tempered glass screen protectors, put those on, and I was good to go. I have this new anti-glare screen on the limited edition OLED, and it's fine. It has no scratches. It has no screen protector. I use the little included dust cloth to wipe dust off the screen if and when it does get dusty. But I've even noticed that this new coating that the screen has attracts dust a lot less than the LCD model's glossy screen that I had before. So yeah, in terms of durability, I think they've made real durability updates across the board that resulted in a console that truly feels portable in a way that it didn't before. Like, it never really felt like something you could just throw in your bag and be good to go. You always needed that bulky case to protect it in your backpack. But if you're looking for a slimmer case, that's where today's sponsor tomtoc comes in. This video is sponsored by tomtoc. Look, I know you have a Steam Deck case already, but there's 3 that I want you to check out. The first one is tomtoc's fancy case. This one is very premium. It's probably my favorite of the bunch because it gives you all of the durability and protection that the original Steam Deck case gives you, but it's a lot slimmer and the design actually looks really good. Then you've got the armored case, which is just as slim as the fancy case, but it's made out of this military grade resin type material that has an awesome clasp that feels so satisfying to click shut. And the best part is it's a snug enough fit where your deck's not going to be moving around in there. And then the third case, which is awesome, is the travel bag. This will fit your Steam Deck or your ROG Ally, which is cool. But on top of that, it'll also fit chargers. It'll fit battery banks. It'll fit screen cleaners. It'll fit controllers. It'll fit any and all of your Steam Deck accessories. I think you can make a strong case for any of these cases. So when you're ready to check them out, click the link down in the description. As always, huge shout out to tomtoc for sponsoring this video. But yeah, in terms of making this thing more portable, we got to talk about the battery life, because I think this is another area where Valve was very conservative on their estimate, and ultimately they did a better job than they put on the website when you're ordering this thing to begin with. So they estimated that the combination of the OLED screen and the slightly bigger battery would result in 50% more battery life. And I gotta say, I have played this thing for hours and hours and hours on end, and I'm honestly surprised at certain points that I don't see that 10% battery life remaining warning come up. I played some AAA games, of course, from the modern age, like Control. I'm about halfway through my 5th playthrough of that game on the Steam Deck OLED, and the battery life is immaculate on that. I can put it in sleep mode and play it every night before bed for around an hour or 2, and I only have to charge it around Thursday or Friday. I've played indie games like Enter the Gungeon, which of course isn't graphically demanding, but I'm running it at 90 Hertz, and the battery life lasts so long that I've never played the game long enough to actually drain the battery, so I think that's a good sign. And the ultimate game that really showed me how perfect of a handheld this thing is Fallout New Vegas. So after the trailer came out, I wanted to go back and replay it because I haven't played it since it came out. I got the collector's edition from GameStop on sale the year it came out, and I thought that was so cool. I still have the cards and the poker chips and everything like that. I was like, I gotta go back and play this game. It takes place in the same setting as the new TV show. Of course, the best way to do that is my brand new Steam Deck OLED, and I installed some mods, just things like sprint, weapon animations, nothing too crazy, and I'm running it at ultra settings, 40 FPS. It does do a little bit of a stutter when you get into a point where it has to load in a new chunk to the map, but it does that on my 4090 gaming PC too, so I'm not holding that against the deck. My wife and I went to Chicago at the beginning of the month to celebrate Christmas with her mom's family, and we decided to take the train because we didn't want to drive. And normally I would be like scrambling to get my power brick charged, bring my extra Steam Deck charger, get everything in the backpack ready to go so I could plug it in when the battery inevitably died. I got that stuff ready, but I had already primed myself for better battery life with this thing, so I ended up not needing to charge it with the battery bank that entire train ride to Chicago. I sat there, I played Fallout New Vegas at ultra settings, 40 FPS, max brightness on this OLED screen, and it lasted the entire trip. So if that's not a ringing endorsement for the Steam Deck's battery improvements, I don't know what is, because even though that game is pretty old at this point, it's still a very big game to take on the go on a handheld that has a 7-inch screen. The next thing I think Valve improved on this thing tenfold are the buttons. They're nice and clicky. The D-pad works really well. At first, I didn't really like the D-pad as much. I thought I preferred the more mushy version of the D-pad that the LCD version of the Steam Deck has, but over time, I've realized that this thing is much better at taking inputs, and you can even kind of rock back and forth when you need to, especially in games like Resident Evil, where you use the D-pad to switch between your quick select guns. I've also noticed that the bumpers feel a lot more durable, which is great because, you know, I broke the thing twice already. They feel a lot more clicky. There's a lot less mushiness to them, and you hear a little bit of an audible click, especially when you're playing somewhere like in bed and it's really quiet and dark. When you click that bumper button, you can hear it and you can feel it, and that's awesome because it makes the thing feel even more premium. And the triggers just feel a little bit better. It might be a placebo effect, right? I don't know for sure if they use new triggers in this thing. I've honestly honestly never had an issue with the Steam Deck's triggers, but they just got a little bit more spring to them. And as someone who hasn't really loved the new adaptive triggers on the DualSense controller with the PS5, that's like my one gripe with that controller, I like the classic style triggers that you get on the Steam Deck. And in games like Fallout New Vegas, it feels great doing the first person shooting with the Steam Deck's new triggers. And one of the biggest complaints people had with the LCD Steam Deck was, of course, the trackpads. Those have been massively improved. Not only are they more even in terms of how they feel, but the haptics that come through with them are much more prominent and actually make it feel like a sort of trackpad where you're moving the mouse one to one instead of it being this floaty kind of weird feeling under your thumb. Like, I don't know, it always felt like there was a little bit of oil underneath my fingers when I was using that trackpad on the LCD model, but the force feedback you get on the OLED model makes it feel so much more premium. And speaking of the haptics, I'm glad they increased the vibration on this thing. It seems like they did it to a level, obviously, that didn't affect battery life, because I just gushed about how much better the battery life is, but it's enough to be noticeable when you're playing a game that supports rumble on the Steam Deck, because before you never noticed it. Like, games would use it and you could kind of feel it when you're scrolling through stuff, or on the desktop mode when you're scrolling down on a web page or something like that, but it was so light even on its highest setting that you just never really knew it was there. Now you know it's there, but it's just enough where it's not going to take you out of the game, and I think they found a perfect middle ground there as well. And finally, the clickiness has stayed just as clicky on the Steam and quick access menu buttons. I am so thankful that they improved those, because if there was one thing that kind of made the original Steam Deck not feel like a premium console that's up to par with something like the Nintendo Switch and kind of sets it apart from things like the ROG Ally or the Lenovo Legion Go, it was those two buttons, and they're two of the most used buttons on the entire device. So I'm glad Valve went back and reassessed those as well. Now, the one big negative I have with the Steam Deck OLED versus the LCD Steam Deck might not be an intentional choice, it might be a software related issue, and that's that the speakers are much quieter. You could hear the LCD Steam Deck speakers if you put it down to 25% or lower, and that was pretty cool when you're playing in bed or in a car ride or in a louder setting where you want to hear what's going on. You could crank those speakers up and you would know, you would hear what was happening in the game. But Valve speakers were so good that you would never get crunchy audio or speaker blowout, which was great. The Steam Deck OLED, I have to turn the thing up to around 75% to get a good level of audio out of every game. And the reason I'm saying that that might not be an intentional choice is that once I upgraded to SteamOS 3.5 beta branch on my Steam Deck LCD, once I upgraded to SteamOS 3.5 on my LCD Steam Deck, when I would let the battery run to 0 and the thing would turn off, when I would turn it back on, the speakers would reset somehow so that they'd be a lot lower. And I'm not positive, but I think it's about the same level that the Steam Deck OLED is. And I have let the battery run out once, so I haven't gone in and done the console command that lets you increase the volume of the speakers to get them back where they were on the LCD at launch. But the interesting thing is, I went and did the console command that I would do to fix this on the LCD model, and the volume slider that I used to use isn't there anymore in the volume sort of breakdown menu you get when you use that console command. So it needs a little investigating. I saw that Valve is working on speaker upgrades for this thing, so we'll see what happens with future updates. But yeah, if this was an intentional choice, I think the speakers are a step down on this thing from the LCD Steam Deck, because not only were they loud before, they were extremely clear to the point where I really wanted Valve to make a pair of gaming earbuds or an overhead headset for the Steam Deck to take on the go. And the last thing I want to talk about is performance, because for me at least, across the board, it has been just slightly better. Not necessarily on the high end, like I'm not getting more frames out of it because I'm someone who uses the frame limiter. I'm just getting a lot less low end performance. Like when you drop frames or you get single frame stutters or things like that, or it drops below 30 FPS, you know, the problems you'd have with the launch model Steam Deck, a lot of those seem to be smoothed out. It's not complete. I still notice frame drops in games like Control. I still notice frame drops in games like Baldur's Gate 3, but overall, that little bit more efficient chip seems to have ironed out a lot of the 1% lows that you would see where the thing would drop below 30 FPS. So overall, I think this was 100% a worth it upgrade. If you have the original Steam Deck, even if you use it once a week or once every couple weeks, I think this is the ultimate version of the device, and it's worth every penny in terms of upgrading. And if you want to put in a little extra work, you can go sell your original Steam Deck on eBay to make up some of the money, but I'm someone who just loves to keep every handheld they've ever bought.